Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm so excited today to introduce you to our friend Justin McLane, who's coming all the way from Tennessee. So, welcome to the show. Nice to have you here with us.
It's so exciting to be here. Hello, everybody.
So, we're good today and ready to go to let you know what it means to go from a life of being raised as an anti Christian and even pagan to become a pastor and how that is connected to our mindset. How does our life change when we change the story that we say in our head? And that's so important because Justin totally changed his life. Let's start from the beginning. What was going on when you were a child or a teenager? What was your understanding of the world and especially of the Christians? These crazy people, homophobic, bigots, torture of women. I don't know what you
All,
heard, but you talk
all
and
the
tell me
usual
all about it.
suspects.
You go.
Religion never actually played a large part. We never talked about it. In the household. It was kind of ignored. There was a couple of points in my life when I was a child. I was 8 years old. My uncle had committed suicide. And so we started to kind of get close to a church then. We were kind of just reaching out, and the family was in pain. And the feedback was, listen, we understand you're going through some troubling times, but there's a good chance that your uncle's gone downstairs. And it was, my family immediately retracted. My father was the only one who reached out. My mother was very, very anti-Christian. And she went to a Catholic high school. So I was born in New England, and so she was going to a Catholic high school in New England. This is old school Catholic with the nuns and the rulers, and yeah. So she was very church hurt. So growing up, we never really talked about it, and it wasn't until I was exposed to paganism as an early teen. I had a friend of mine that I was going to school with. He and his family had actually raised him as a Wiccan. And so that was really my first exposure to organized religion was paganism. And so Christianity and religion was always kind of just a running joke in the house. It again, like I said, we didn't really talk about it. We never went to church. We never did anything with that. So this family sort of adopted me, and I was trained by a Wiccan high priestess as through my early teens, and spent nearly 28 years as a practicing pagan, going from Wicca to Celtic Druidism, based in Scotland, Ireland, and moving on to the Nordic Viking Asatru, that kind of style.
Okay, so because I have not lived that lifestyle, what does it mean in the daily life to be a druid or a Wiccan? What was different between this group and anyone else?
So it's funny enough, the religion, the routine of it is really not all that different. There is, of course, you have statues, and you have pictures, and you have sort of a prayer routine. But with paganism, there is more of a ritualistic aspect to it. You incorporate more candles, crystals, symbols, nature. You would go out into nature more. You would meet with more people, but it's very secretive. And you kind of it's if you remember the movie The Craft, it's that was actually a pretty good representation, where you kind of go in the woods and you have these super secret rituals that you would do, where you try to get into like secret knowledge, and you would cast these spells to kind of control aspects of your life. And but for the most part, the day-to-day stuff, you wake up, you would give thanks to whatever God you recognized, and it was more of an acceptance of different pantheons, is what you would call them. So you had, of course, your Roman pantheon with Zeus. You had your Greek with Jupiter. You would have sort of the Celts with Cernunnos and Bridget, and then you would have the Vikings with Thor and Odin, and you kind of accepted that these gods existed, but it wasn't like Christian gods. There wasn't a an all-powerful aspect to it. The gods are fallible. They make mistakes. Some of them they can be killed, and um, so you didn't really give them as much as credit, and you wouldn't ask for them for so much. You really spend a lot more time fending for yourself, kind of thing. And then when you got into the ritualistic stuff, um, where you would go into the woods, and it was sort of a big hoopla. You kind of prepared for it. You had, and it really coincided with stages in season, or full moon, new moon, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, did you think that these kind of religions and gods they were adding something to your life because you were maybe centered on something bigger than you, or because they gave you a routine? I'm trying to understand what was useful about it. Just out of
No,
ignorance.
it was more of a control aspect. Growing up, my parents were very work driven, and my father was we were raised very poor. So he bettered himself as I got older. By into my late teens, he had gotten into becoming a network engineer, and he started working for larger companies, and really making a successful go at it. My mother was a nurse. She had always worked nighttime shift differential. She was working as many hours as she possibly could. So I was really left to my own devices. And so it was kind of a control aspect to feel like I had some influence to the things that were going on around me that I really didn't have a whole lot of influence on. I was just I spent a lot of time outside, being a, Gen X millennial crossover. It was go outside and don't come back until, the street lights come on. And so it was, you spent so much time in the woods and in nature, and it gave you that inkling of control, and dealing with the supernatural aspect of it. I mean, I know now that you're working with darker forces, you're working with demonic entities, but the devil gives gifts, and so there were certain things that I got out of it. Working with tarot cards, I was able to very accurately use tarot cards. I was able to pick up on presences of dead people, and be able to read people much better, get an insight to how people were feeling just by body expressions, and nonverbal communication became very natural to me. So the devil does give gifts, and so there was an aspect to it where I was able to read people, and it was very attractive.
I guess so. I mean, I grew up in Italy, so main religion Catholic, but there is a lot of superstition. Like if a black cat crosses the road, or if a mirror breaks, if a salt. So is it similar like in Brazil, the macumba? So they have exorcism, they have so much. And there are people they pray to the picture, the painting of a person they call
Mhm.
saint, and
Yes.
they hope that the saint will intercede for them as if they cannot just talk to God about it. And the very intermediate person is actually a Virgin Mary. The poor thing is being thrown in there. It's like she intercedes, she doesn't. The intercession person is Jesus. But nobody really seems to understand that in the 70s, 80s. And there were a lot of people going to, if I remember, have their cards read because maybe they had a breakdown of their family, maybe split up from a partner. And then they went, oh, this woman knew all about me, must be true. And
Mhm.
God told me to. So it can be quite intertwined with a strong faith in God or not. You know, the
Mhm.
crystals, the thing is very, I think it's a fascinating world. Also, astrology, believing that um, something miles away can determine how your day is going to be. That's an incredible thing, isn't it? And
Mhm.
it's
Absolutely.
wonderful. And you know, it can give meaning to a life. It's nothing less. However, you grew up then as a stout atheist, so you didn't believe. This is the weird. You believe in spirits, but not in God.
So yeah. Well, my mother, in fact, is still a very stout atheist. When I became a Christian, she actually stopped speaking to me, and so the only Bible verses I was exposed to growing up was the just kind of the ones that you can like throw out to get people question their faith. You know, a woman shall not prophesy or pray without having her head covered, and uh, all the kind of little nuanced ones that makes people question. You know, oh, is this that was the only exposure that we really had. My mother was very factual based and science, and it was very like if it was she's a naturalist. If she can't see it, then it doesn't exist. She has no belief in the spiritual and the supernatural in any way, shape, or form. My father is slightly more agnostic. But even then, we never talked about it. And so my exposure came from the outside. And then I was actually a paranormal investigator for 3 years, where I would go into haunted buildings and haunted houses and, set up camera equipment and try to capture ghosts moving things around. And the way that I approached it was very the way that I was taught from my family. It was always going in as a skeptic. I was a skeptic in everything. So yeah, it was kind of it was a duality of man because I was a pagan who very much believed in the supernatural. I understood that the supernatural existed, but I needed to see evidence of it. So I spent a large amount of time going after evidence, like trying to go to these ultra haunted places, going attending seances, messing with tarot cards. And at one point I actually owned a metaphysical store where we sold tarot cards, books, and crystals and herbs and stuff like that.
Wow. And before I wanted to connect to two things that are so important, so interesting. What is this thing about crystals then? Because some Christians are told, oh, do not use the crystals. And some people say, but scientifically they work. And I'm like, I'm so confused. What is the connection between this dark world and the crystals? Can you explain it? Because I just feel like I don't understand it.
So there is a little bit of science. There's always a little bit of truth mixed in there. We know that quartz contains information. It retains. We use quartz to record information now. And so the idea is that you can charge these crystals with positive energy. You can put them out in full moon, and we know that. I mean, science tells us anybody who's ever been around a hospital or police station during a full moon knows that during these times the energy level increases. So they believe that they put water out to charge water or crystals or anything like that, and then these certain crystals have a a different sort of effect. Rose quartz does this, whereas regular quartz does this, or granite or obsidian. It has these natural properties, and a lot of it is just kind of part of it is, a little bit of science mixed into some mythology. And then a lot of it was just people stuff that had made up. Um, During the late 70s, the guy who actually wrote the religion Wicca, his last name is Gardner. He included a lot of these things, and what he did was he cherry picked from these different religions, and different herbs have these different medicinal properties and ley lines, and so it was just kind of a montage of like pick this and we'll take this, and so a lot of it was just kind of like suggestion too. Like if you see a person wearing a quartz crystal and they're like, oh, you must be having a great day, your crystal's glowing. Well, just that suggestion is enough for them to put more faith and belief into it, because if they go out and they buy these crystals and they spend 100 and sometimes $1,000 in crystals, and oh yeah, so it's big money. And so they would have these crystals, and of course they've invested so much money and time into this, that the mere suggestion of affirmation of what they believe strengthens it. And so it's kind of, that story that just kind of gets told and told and told and told and told until everybody's like, oh, it must be true. Look at, astrology, what's going on with like, oh, I'm a Taurus, so I must be, you must be a Taurus because you're stubborn. It's like, well, no, I'm a Pisces. I'm actually a Taurus, but it's a lot of it is kind of just stories that have been told over and over again, just like our, the headless horseman, it's a story that's been told over and over and over again.
Yeah. And also, there is a lot of cognitive distortion and bias because
Oh,
we are
yeah.
human. And if we believe something, then our reticular activating system will forever look for anything to confirm what we believe. And it will automatically reject anything that goes against it, even if it's right in front of our face. So there must be something there that happened to you that you went from not believing in God to suddenly believing in God. Let's go there, Justin. I can't wait.
Okay. So this is here's a warning. I thought when it was a major event. I thought that when this occurred to me, this was a typical thing that happened. Mind you, I had already, experienced the supernatural. But again, I love science. I love science. And even after I became a Christian, I taught science classes with homeschool kids. I love science, like the nuances of it. And so the James Webb Telescope had been launched, and 6 months later, it was finally kicking back some information. And so I was reading the peer-reviewed articles, the stuff that the scientists send to each other that doesn't really get published, that they're more honest with that. There's a big bias in science with certain things, whether it be with God or spiritualism or even like dark matter, where oil comes from. So I was reading these peer-reviewed articles, and I thought that we were going to see evidence of like aliens. They're going to find a Dyson sphere. I was excited. I was like, yeah, UFOs. And I was actually very surprised that a lot of the articles were, a lot of the scientists were like, the universe is more organized than we initially thought. A lot of them actually talked about intelligent design, a created universe as opposed to a naturally developing universe. And so I kind of set my phone aside. I was reading this online and kind of started to like meditate on it and kind of just absorb all that information. And the thought just occurred to me, and I really spent some time on it. Like, maybe there is some fact behind a creator. Maybe Christianity had it right. I had already moved to Eastern Tennessee, and this is definitely God's country. I mean, there are churches on every corner, and this is some of the most Bible believing people I'd ever been around. I'd lived all over the country. And so I was meditating on this, and I had a very intense supernatural experience with God. And on August 12th, I was a pagan. On August 13th, I was a Christian. I mean, it was that intense. And walking away from that, I uh, I realized that I was wrong. I was completely wrong, and misled by a lot of people growing up in New England, and uh, Christianity has sort of taken a backseat to everything. Some of the most beautiful churches I think in the United States are in New England, but per popular believers, not really there. And so I really deep dove into the Bible, reading the Bible. And I hit it from, I had that confirmation now that God existed. And so I needed to approach this with that belief as opposed to God did not exist. And so I had to change the entire way that I thought, that I acted, and really deep dove into it. And then there was a progression, being led by the Holy Spirit, that ultimately led me becoming a lead pastor and planting a church.
So let me stop you here because there will be people that are listening and they're staunch essays and they're like, well, but what makes you go from this mindset of there can be a God to the mindset of, okay, I'm going to be open? Is it just the fact that you've been researching for years, or did you actually feel like a warm feeling inside when you were thinking the right things? I always, like in my church, we talk about the spirit, and we always say when the spirit talks to you, you feel something inside, a burning, a sensation of peace. But when there is darkness, you feel the coldness, the emptiness, the stupor, the
Mhm.
confusion. I wonder if that was the same experience for you at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, actually, one of the first sermons that I had given to my church was people. You have this hole in your life when you don't have God and the Holy Spirit. You're kind of searching for it, and you fill it. You fill it with whatever you can. Some people fill it with the running joke in my church is that I always said, drugs, alcohol, and hookers. The people is like that's what people try to fill it in, but it really is more than that. You try to fill it with science, you try to fill it with um, whatever, and once
Hobbies,
you
addictions,
yeah, oh
anything.
yeah, and they really they all are. I mean, some people they have a codependency with your family members where you're addicted to your family members. My children, unfortunately, I didn't become a Christian until later in life, so my children, I didn't raise them as Christians, and so I'm seeing this kind of same thing play out with my children. But once that hole was filled, it really was like that's the best description. What you gave is like it was cold and empty, and I just felt like a person. And now it's warm. It's the Holy Spirit has filled it and I have a purpose. And it's not like, I have two deployments to Iraq. I'm a business owner. I'd done a lot of things in my life. I was actually in an outlaw motorcycle club for a short while, and so I'd done a lot of things, and I tried to identify as those things. I try to identify as a soldier. I try to identify as a biker. I try to identify as a business owner. But it wasn't until I started to identify as a child of God that everything else fell into place. My relationship with my current wife got better. My relationship with my friends became more authentic. And even although my mother, when I like I said, when I became a Christian, my mother stopped speaking to me. My father stopped speaking to me because I voted for Trump in the last election. So a lot of my family members stopped communicating with me. And it was like a lot of that stuff that I had tried to fill was stripped away. But because it was such a large part of my life, I really was left with nothing but God. And at first, I was very angry about it. I'm like, I'm very lonely. But once I realized that that's really all I needed, then the Lord is like, now we can begin. And He started to just pour into my life.
Wow, what an experience. And how sad also that a family member, because they disagree on your beliefs or actions, they don't talk to you. What does it mean? You can only be a family member if you agree on everything.
I guess. It's funny. We talk about nowadays, being tolerant, and
Mm,
you're not tolerant to the things you like. I don't tolerate steak. I love steak. You're tolerant to the things you don't necessarily agree with.
mm,
And it seems like, I'm unfortunately, I'm not the only person that's dealing with it. I know quite a few people who are dealing
mm.
with, family members who no longer speak to each other because you voted for a different political party or you don't agree with a specific thing. And it's on both sides. A conservative doesn't agree with what their liberal family member is doing. And then again, a liberal doesn't agree with the conservative family members. And instead of just agreeing to disagree, they cut them out. And it's one of the reasons why I've written a book, and hopefully it'll be published later this year or later or spring next year. But there's so much that's going on in our lives. We're so crowded and we've poured so much into our lives, identity and everything, that we're cutting off our communication with our friends, our family, and cutting off communication with God.
Mm. That is so sad, and I experienced this first person. Can you say that in my own life? So I can see how this can change. When you have family dynamics that are difficult, then it makes all your life complicated because now this person, instead of debating, like we in Italy would just debate stuff, and then
Yeah.
maybe have a little argument about
Well, there you go. Yeah.
if you prefer Berlusconi instead of
Yeah.
whatever, and then you're back again and you have your cup of coffee and you get on. But
Yeah.
not here in the US. I noticed they just cut you off completely if you don't agree.
Yeah.
And they don't even discuss it, they just cut you off. You just
Yeah.
discover.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's gone all the way up to higher up. So I'm a member of an organization called America's Black Robe Regiment, and one of the things that we do is we encourage pastors and Christians to get involved with politics. Pastors need to talk about what's going on in their country, and that there's a very knee-jerk reaction to that. They're like, no, 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 we can't have, politics in the church, and it's like, no, 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 you have politics in parts of your life that doesn't need to be. When and it's become so polarized that again, we have family members cutting each other out, and so the pushback is like they're trying to like get one person's fighting and the other person, like somebody needs to win. It's like no, 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 they work together. Not so much religion, but like belief that needs to be in every aspect of your life. That when God poured it into me, God is the most important thing in my life, and my relationship with my wife got better. My aspects on politics got healthier, and they changed. I mean, of course, they changed a little bit. But when with America's Black Robe Regiment, we're trying to help people understand that politics in church is okay, and church in politics is okay. Like, if you don't want it, we can agree to disagree, but it's okay. Like it can be allowed.
Yes, it's a great point of view. I mean, in our church, we don't discuss politics because we have this time to talk about the gospel. But certainly the members can talk and say, well, that's the leaders tell us to always think, is this person going to bring about God's work or is he going to
Mhm.
destroy God's work? It's important that we have peace in the world and understanding, and this communication should be going. So I see that your life has changed quite a lot, and you went from one end to the other end, although you were not a bad person. But you just had your beliefs, and so you were not growing. What could be then the difference in the mindset? I think is great because now you can see your potential is no longer connected to this God, they don't exist, they can't do
Yeah.
anything. In fact, there was that a story of Baal and all this? Did you want
Yeah.
to say the story?
No, 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 but you're right. So when you attach your identity and personality to things that are fleeting, and we see it nowadays. If your identity is I'm a conservative, or your identity is I'm gay, or I'm a transgender, or whatever it is, when you pour your identity into that's something that may be changing, or that your opinion may change on, it's not based on a foundation. In Christianity, we love talking about Jesus being the foundation. God is not changing. And so that's your identity, when being a child of God becomes your identity, it's a solid foundation that you can build your life on, and you can really build massive, massive things. But coming from the military, I was kind of surprised to find out, like most guys who are like tier one operators, special operations, CIA, they actually have a belief system that they can fall back on. So when times get really tough, they have that underlying faith and belief system that strengthens them.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great idea to look back at what we're thinking and look here and look in the future and
Mhm.
ask ourselves, if I keep living in the way I'm living, am I gonna get there where I want to be? And sometimes that doesn't quite align. So we
Yeah.
have to
Yep.
look back and say, well, just because I've been living this way, that doesn't mean I have to do it all my life, because in the end of the day, what will count when we're 80 or 90 and on the
Mhm.
deathbed, maybe 100, it's going to be those relationships that we have with our people, how much good we've done in the society, how do we feel about ourselves. And we spent all our time being fighting with people or rejecting them or criticizing them. What an empty life. It's very consuming for our souls. So let's use our last minutes to give an anchor and a hope to those who might be swimming in this confusion and think, well, I know I'm not happy where I am, but I really want to build this relationship with there is a God. Is it possible? And how would
Mhm.
you do it? What would you tell them to do first?
So, first thing is cut out, and it doesn't even have to be permanently, cut out so much. Our world is so noisy. I mean, there's so many people before they even get out of bed, they've already checked their emails, checked their social media, watched a couple of YouTube videos, I mean, podcasts. Uh, just cut that out. Get quiet for a little bit and find out where your heart is. And if your heart feels kind of empty, then you need to pour some love into your heart. And if you already started to feel like, that God is out there and he's listening, talk to him and talk to him like you're sitting at the dinner table. God has a seat at our dinner table, and have a conversation with him. Sit down and say, God, I'm really struggling with this thing at work. I'm really struggling with this relationship with my parents, and talk to him. Laying our problems at the feet of God and knowing that He can take care of them is so empowering. I used to deal with horrible depression and anxiety and PTSD from my deployments to Iraq. At one point I was taking 16 different medications, and once I learned how to lay that at the feet of the Lord, it was empowering. I no longer take any medications. I haven't had any anxiety. I don't have any more nightmares. I haven't had a PTSD, no more flashbacks, none of it, none of it. And I've been able to quiet my world around me, and my focus has been exponentially increased. I mean, I can read like I've never read. I read the Bible. I was trying to read the Bible 5 times in one year, and I made it 3 times. You can do some really incredible things. I mean, there's still things I go to the doctor for, but I'm praying first, and I'm praying all the time. I'm in the car, I'm praying, and we think of prayer as like inserting the ATM card and like, God, I need this, but prayer is also, it's just communication with God, just listening, being able to just quiet yourself and say, Lord, what do you want me to do today? Now, he's not always going to answer right away. Sometimes he wants to just let us be. Sometimes he wants to give us that quiet. The Bible tells us that we need to Sabbath and fast and just spend time with God. And we filled our lives with so much noise. You have to cut it out. I think that's the really biggest thing that we can do. And then once we figure out how to do that, just put God in a little bit more. Make sure you're saying grace, and not just for dinner time. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, leftovers. Hey, Lord, it's me again with this leftover meatloaf. Um, and having that heart of gratitude is so empowering and so wonderful. One of the things that I preach is that we need to be thankful for the tests that God gives us. And most of the time, I'm like, hey, be thankful when you get a flat tire. Be thankful when you're struggling, because that's God giving you the opportunity to strengthen your faith. And it may be so you may have gotten a flat tire because you avoided an accident 5 miles down the road. You don't know. Just be grateful and stay in that mindset of being grateful. It will do incredible things in your lives. And just those two things can change everything.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. I would like to start tomorrow. Oh, well, I'm already a Christian and a believer, but it just gives me the enthusiasm in knowing that it's actually an approachable God. It's not what people have been saying all along. It's not what we've been preached to. It's not this very weird being with no body, no flesh, not understanding of who we are. He actually created Jesus and all of us in his image. So we got flesh and bones. He must have flesh. He understands pain. He understands rejection. He understands everything. But we don't talk to him. Maybe we don't feel good enough. Maybe we don't understand that's why Jesus died, because we're never going to be good enough, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it just feels
Yeah.
so distant. So it is good to remember that our mindset can change. And that's how you do it from a neuroscience point of view. Start with being grateful. So you open
Mhm.
the reticular activating system to what is going on that is good in a life. And if you're looking, I'm looking to buy a red jumper with black stripes. your RAS will start looking for that. And the same is when you're looking for God. Now you're going to find evidence
Hmm.
of everything is done. Like when you look at the sunset every day, and I go, fortunate here, go, the mountains around me, so I can see the sunset all the
Hmm.
way down to the end. And I see the deer coming out, and I see these splendid colors, and I'm like, wow, God, you have some angels there that are very busy creating this spectacular scenery every day for us. Thank you so much. And I don't say it every day, because sometimes I kind of miss the sunset. I'm in the wrong room. But just looking at these small things, then eventually we become grateful. Then we are filled with love, and then we start looking at life differently. And then
Yeah.
maybe we're just going to find that happiness that we were looking for. And it's not in addiction, in pornography, in drugs, in alcohol,
Yeah.
in smoking, in eating too much. It's just in the addiction to being happy with God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Which
it.
may be the only healthy one.
Absolutely. Well, all I can say, we have very little time. So I want to thank you so much for being with us and for coming
My
to the
pleasure.
show today to share your message that we can create this relationship with God. So thank you again. Did you want to say bye-bye to everyone before we go?
Yes, yes. Bye bye, bye bye. And something that I always say when I start every sermon is we love you, we miss you, and we will see you soon. And I want to say that to all your followers. We love you, we miss you, and we will see you soon.
There we go. We done that. We love you, we miss you, and we see you next week. And remember to click, share, and maybe subscribe, and then check out Justin. So maybe when a book comes out, you're already there to buy it and get closer to God. Thank you so much. See you all next week. Bye bye.